I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras podcast.
Hare Krishna, you are listening to the Late Morning Program with Nam Ras, the #1 Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm here with Deva Madhava Prabhu. Deva Madhava Prabhu, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. Just watching the little trailer and being reminded of all the illustrious souls you've had on makes me even more nervous to be here. Thank you.
You are an illustrious soul, and I'm so glad you're here with us. I just wanted to say a little bit about Deva Madhava Prabhu. So I heard about Ypsilanti. Like, I didn't even know how to spell the place, but I heard about
that's pretty good pronunciation also.
Ypsilanti, yeah. So it's in Michigan. That's where Deva Madhava Prabhu is. And I recently went to go visit the place, the community, for a wedding. And I was so impressed by the devotees, by the community, by their mood. And I was just blown away by it. I was skeptical. I was like, what's going on there? Harmony Collective? What's going on? But I can't say enough good things about it. And I wanted to have Deva Madhava Prabhu, who is the leader and the inspirer there, to come talk about it, talk about his personal journey as well. So maybe we can start there, Prabhu. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came in contact with devotees?
Sure. And it was a pleasure having you. That was such a sweet wedding weekend.
It was really nice. Such a nice time.
The whole crew is beautiful.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start kind of from the months leading up to meeting devotees. It can be a bit of a saga story.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago area, actually the neighborhood that your Guru Maharaj grew up in.
Oh, wow.
Deerfield. And the reason I was there is that for 5 years before, over my college summers, I had been working with a publishing company that prints like encyclopedia style textbooks. And they recruit college kids every summer to go door to door selling those books.
Interesting.
So I was trained in book distribution by this company. And just to give you a little, they started as a Bible sales company, and then they transitioned in the 70s to educational material. And the schedule that they would like encourage us, because we're not employees, we're like independent contractors, but they would say, you got to, if you want to be successful and make a bunch of money, then you have to follow this schedule. So we'd wake up every day at 6 a.m. We would take a cold shower. We would take like an oath not to party, no drinking, no hanging out with the opposite sex. Like, we're basically living in an ashram for 3 months out of the year. Wow. So that we could make a bunch of money. That was the whole idea behind it, and gain business skills and, resume stuff, blah, blah. So I'd done that through my college summers. And then I graduated, and my so the following summer afterwards, I was just living a very hapless life at that point. I was in the middle of like my existential, what is this world about? What is it for? And why can't I be happy and satisfied with anything? And why is everyone making each other miserable? Can't they just stop? All the kind of bubbling existential understandings that folks who join often have. So I was in the throes of that. And my buddy who had worked with this company a long time, and he was excellent. He'd make like $50,000 in a summer. So he was prolific.
Wow.
Yeah, good guy. He stayed in the ashram a few days with me, chanted 16 rounds on Haridas Thakur's disappearance day.
Wow.
Sweet person, John Carey. So he actually helped some of the devotees down in North Carolina where he lives. But anyway, John said, come to Chicago with me. I know you're not doing anything. I know you're just kind of like wasting away. So come make a bit of money, and then you can figure out what you're going to do after that. And so, because I had no better plan, than I took his suggestion. But quickly, 2 weeks in, I had no heart for that anymore, like going door to door, trying to sell something, make some money. And I was in this beautiful neighborhood where your Guru Maharaj writes about also this kind of existential crisis he had in that neighborhood of seeing how nice some people are living. And then just a few blocks over, seeing how other people are living and being very upset by that.
Right.
And I grew up in a low income minority neighborhood, as people would call it today. And I saw that also face to face. My parents didn't have much money, but they were excellent parents. And I had a great support system of family that I was provided for emotionally, financially. I had what I needed. but I saw just my neighbors, my friends, they weren't. And that always put this wondering in my heart of why isn't this world a place where everybody can feel safe and protected? Because it seems like it's possible, but it's not happening. And so that had this like existential wondering in my heart as a child. And then when I got to Highland Park, Chicago, and saw this ritzy, glammed up scene, and everyone's lawn looks like a green carpet, and they're driving a brand new Beamer or Mercedes, and all the moms look like they're 30, even though they're 60. It's like,
Right.
it was just cringy for me, and I wanted out. And so in my heart, since like March, I'd been hearing this voice, which I'll now attribute to Paramatma, but at the time I didn't quite have that language yet. This voice saying, go to Detroit, go to Detroit. And I had no idea. I'd never been to Detroit, no family, no friends, no job, nothing. So I just kind of put it off to the side, and people told me it was crazy. And, like, why would you go there? There's nothing there. It's like a third world country now. But after 2 weeks of Chicago Highland Park scene, I couldn't help it anymore. And I just got on a Greyhound bus with a bicycle. I had a bathing suit and 3 t-shirts to my name, and that was it. And I showed up in Detroit, essentially homeless. I had nowhere to be except there. That was where I wanted to start. And
that's where your friend was?
No, my friend was in Chicago. So
Oh.
I was selling books with them, but then I kind of abandoned that program,
okay,
and left them to go to Detroit. So I landed in Detroit, and the first day that I was there, I came across this place called Cobo Hall, which is where they have the big auto expo every year, the Detroit Auto Show, famous. And they were having another event at that time called the Social Justice Forum. It's like a Comic-Con, but for charities. Like any organization that's doing anything good for anyone, they were there. And they'd all picked Detroit. They decided to have their conference in Detroit that year because Detroit was so bombed out.
Yeah.
It was so neglected. It was so in need of help that they said, let's all go there and churn up the do-good spirit. So that was started the first day I landed in Detroit. And I thought to myself, wow, this is why the universe brought me here. I'm going to find my tribe. I'm going to find my cause. I'm going to find my people. Because I'd started to have some, again, feeling that it's about service, it's about giving, but I didn't have the larger ideas in place yet. And so I went around to every booth for 3 days, and I talked, people, save the whales, save the children, save the migrant laborers, save the immigrants, save everyone is pointing out so many problems. And after 3 days, I just felt worse because it really hit me in a heavy way that all of these people are able to pinpoint certain symptoms of some disease. But what that disease is, we don't know. And Prabhupada would later put this exact language to it when I would read his books, that all of these ills in the society are symptoms of a disease of disconnection from God. And that really, although I didn't have the language, it really hit me after those 3 days where I was just left more disappointed and despondent after talking to all those good people, doing all those good things, that I'm still not satisfied. And that just sent me into a melancholy. And I was finally humbled enough to admit that I'm not going to be the one to figure something out. I need a help that no one's ever shown me before. And I need help. I can't figure it out on my own. And in that existential moment, that crucible, I knocked on the door of the temple president.
Of Detroit?
Yeah. And it was
oh my goodness.
What's that?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Funny little circumstance how that happened. So just before I left Chicago, the 2 guys that I was rooming with, we discuss our sales each night. That's what you do when you're a sports team or whatever. So our little ashram, book distribution, and my friend Ben had said offhandedly, Indians always buy, meaning Indian people always buy the books. And I was like, really? I've never met any, because just somehow the territory that I had usually worked at, there weren't many Indians. Right. But he had somehow worked in several cities where, there's usually a neighborhood or a township where all the Indians kind of congregate. Right. So he had hit a few of those, and he just noticed that, yeah, Indians really care about education. They care about their kids. They're going to buy the books. So that was just a little mantra in the back of my head. Somehow I took note of that. And then there in Detroit, I was going door to door with these books, and no one was buying anything because they're all dirt poor, and education on that level is far from most of their realities and etc. And so I knocked on this devotee's door, and his wife answered, and she was Indian. And in my head, I was like, cha-ching, I'm going to get to eat. So she said, my husband's not here right now. Why don't you come back when he's here? And ordinarily that's just a polite way of saying no. And so you kind of move on. But I was so desperate. I was like, okay, these guys, like, they have a job, they have money, he's at work. Let me go back and try to sell them a book. And sure enough, I went back, and instead of selling him a book, I bought one of his books, or rather he gave me one of Srila Prabhupada's books, Science of Self-Realization.
Wow.
Yeah, this is sweet. Braj Kumar Prabhu, his name is now. Wonderful devotees. They still live near the temple. They still every day have some service. He's still temple president. So Karuna Radhika is his wife's name. So Prabhupada's words were just everything that I had always hoped for and never knew were there. And that book, especially SSR, is a devotee maker. It's so well laid out that the questions one has after reading one chapter are answered in the next chapter. It's a very natural flow of thought and building into accepting Krishna consciousness in total, which is exactly what I did after reading the book. So thank you to Prabhupada, thank you to Braj Kumar, and that's kind of the short version of me coming into the movement.
Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in Michigan in Ypsilanti. Tell us the kind of the story of how that happened.
Yeah, so I moved into the ashram. I met the devotees in July, and then I had a girlfriend still in New York City, and so I was like going back and forth, and the devotees were asking me to move into the ashram already, but I was like, they don't know what I'm doing with my girlfriend in New York City, so I don't feel right, entering into that kind of commitment, knowing the expectation that it has, and I could cheat things, but I didn't want to do that. Right. So then, thankfully, Krishna made an arrangement where that relationship squarely ended in late February. Right after Shivratri, the devotee said, pray to Lord Shiva to remove your obstacles. And I was like, we don't pray to demigods. We're pure devotees of Krishna. We don't need these demigods. What is this nonsense? Prabhupada said. But the devotees chilled me out and said, no, you worship Tulsi Devi, worship Lord Shiva to help you in Krishna consciousness. So I was like, all right, I'll try it. Sure enough, 2 days later after Shivratri, I get the end letter for the relationship that's been going on for 5 years.
Wow.
So I took it as, what it was, mercy. I moved into the ashram in March of 2011. And then that following year in Detroit, 2011, that following year, I went to, my godbrother took me to Mayapur and I was initiated. And then that summer going into 2012 is when we started our little Krishna house in Ann Arbor, because I'd met one devotee, Siddhari Prabhu now, but at the time, Siddharth Chabra, who was going to University of Michigan. And he's just the classic, pious Indian boy who's got his heart that he wants to give to Krishna, but no one around him cares. And so he's just on the angle towards Facebook or Amazon or whatever. And so I was on book distribution and I met him and invited him to a program, and he never left. And so we became very close, and he was paying $1,200 a month for a room in Ann Arbor because Ann Arbor is so pricey. And so I said, we could rent a house for that much. We could easily have a little center. And one of the senior devotees in Detroit, Sri Nandanandana Prabhu, he had suggested that I start going to Ann Arbor more and try to start something there. So on that indication, Siddhari Prabhu and I got together and we started renting a place in Ann Arbor. And then a year later, we met, during that time, we met my first wife, Falguni, and she was going to Eastern Michigan University, which is in Ypsi. And she said that, hey, Ypsi's cool, people are nicer, the property is cheaper, you could get a bigger place there. And so we started renting something in 2013 in Ypsi. And then in 2014, on her suggestion, and then 2014, we started mortgaging what is now the Harmony Collective, the 108 North Adams Street property.
Nice. Such a cool center you have there. It's so different than a normal, a Hare Krishna temple. Tell us a little bit about the vision there for the Harmony Collective. How you get that name, and what's the vision really?
The name came from Siddhari Prabhu. actually, and myself, we were chewing on it over making some boga one day in the kitchen. We noticed that we were just kind of de facto calling ourselves Krishna House because we are near a university and young people, and so it's like, in the movement, everyone likes to label. It's like, oh yeah, I know what you are. You're a kirtaniya, you're a book distributor, you're a pujari, so you're a Krishna House. And so we kind of took on that label, even though we weren't exactly doing things that those devotees do. Although all glories to that program, Kalakanta Prabhu is one of my mentors, so I don't take anything away from them. But it didn't quite feel right for us, and I'd begun to kind of internally pray to my spiritual master that I want to serve your heart's inner desire. I want to really, do that which means the most to you. And I started to get some indications through that prayer that taking care of the devotees that are already here is the service that would be pleasing. As much as bringing in new people is exciting, and that's why we got the center in the first place, was college town and new people and big programs for young people that's relevant and etc. I was noticing that Krishna is sending all of these young people who had already been connected to the movement, but for different reasons didn't feel engaged or involved the way that they'd expected they would be.
Right.
And to take care of them and to encourage them and to help them develop themselves and mature was what Krishna in so many ways was indicating. So we took that name, the Harmony Collective, to indicate this mood of not having a one-size-fits-all idea of what it means to be in Krishna consciousness anymore, and instead recognize that everybody already has a relationship with Krishna. As a center, as a community, it's our responsibility to encourage that existing relationship already. And the nature of all those relationships together, if they're expressed in a healthy way, will be a harmonious one. Harmony implies simultaneous, one and different. If you have like a mosaic on your wall, all the different pieces are different sizes and shapes and even textures. There's so much variety in the mosaic, and yet when you look at it in total, it conveys one image.
Right.
And that's the mood that we wanted to create, which I feel people expect when they come to the movement, when they read the books, when they hear about the archetypes of our culture. They expect a much more variegated experience than the one that they're getting in their local community or their local sangha. And so we wanted to set that tone for us and also for others. When we tell people that, hey, we're the Harmony Collective, it feels less sectarian than like Krishna House or ISKCON Ypsilanti, or it leaves us a little more wiggle room to develop relationships with people and groups that otherwise might feel a little off-put by the religious tone of a different name.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that you, like, for example, some of our mutual friends, they spend time, they live there, but they're also kind of like working out what they want to do in their lives and things like that. I thought that was really ingenious, like that you're getting people there, and it's not just like, okay, you have to be brahmachari and you have to dedicate all your time to the temple, and then when you're done with that, we won't ever see you again.
Yeah, thanks. Let us know when you're making money so you can start donating.
Right. This is a genius idea. I mean, do you see that? Like, what's the long-term vision for that? I mean, is it like, I understand maybe those people who maybe come in as like young people who want to work outside, and then they live in the Harmony Collective also, then they'll want to stick around when they're married. Is that kind of like the master plan?
It's working out that way more than I intended, honestly.
Oh, really? Nice.
So the conception that we created was this idea of a next generation ashram, or sometimes we call it the launchpad ashram,
right?
Which is for people that have their philosophical basis in Krishna consciousness. They know what it means to do sadhana. They know the value of that. They accept Prabhupada and Krishna. And now it's time to figure out, what is my life going to look like for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, living a movement-based lifestyle. That's how we frame it. That we all want to have that immersive experience of being a part of Mahaprabhu's culture. Right. And we also wonder, how are we going to pay the bills? And where are my children going to go to school? And what am I going to eat? And these questions are natural. And we see that the movement has not done a good job of answering some of them up until now.
Yeah.
So when I looked at the landscape, what can we offer here at Harmony Collective to ourselves and also the larger movement? it's helpful to have young people, that fresh energy, that like bhakta vibe. You need that in a community. They're a healthy element. And I've noticed that even when we were in our kind of full-on preaching days, we were never able to get the critical mass needed to have like a 6 or 7 person bhakta program. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a place where that kind of thing is happening. You have like 7 or 8 brahmacharis, like all on the same page, doing the same thing.
Yeah.
In that way, then that environment is healthy. But when you're just like 1 or 2 guys that are the brahmacharis, then I've noticed that that environment is a lot less supportive for them. And it tends towards a kind of like abusive level of subordination between them and the rest of the congregation, right? Like, you're the guys that have to do everything we don't want to do.
Right.
And they get a whiff of that pretty quickly, or they get stuck in that, and then they can't conceive of themselves outside of that very narrow, limited scope of service. And they leave the brahmachari ashram, and they practically leave Krishna consciousness. So I surveyed the landscape and thought, well, we already have a lot of places where people can go be bhaktas, right? There's Krishna House. At the time, Denver had a nice ashram going on, and I think they could again. There's a couple places in North America where there's already a decent bhakta atmosphere, but there's not really a place where there's an atmosphere where somebody can kind of stabilize their Krishna consciousness without having to worry about a rent and utilities and a full-time job right away after the ashram. So we thought, why not give people a place where they can have a little time to focus more on those long-term interests that will help them maintain a lifestyle that will help them keep themselves connected to the movement. That's one part of the Launchpad Ashram. The other part is people like Ujjvala. You know Ujjvala well.
Yes. Yes.
And he's been absorbed in Sanskrit study for the last 1.5 years. And
Wow.
He's been with us about that long, really 2 years now. He's been with us for maybe 1.25 years. And he is keeping himself to a 6 to 10 hour a day schedule, studying the classical approach to learning Sanskrit. And I'm so happy to be able to provide a space for him where he doesn't have to worry about the kind of overhead that a temple usually has their live-in residents worry about. Right. He has a few basic things that we expect of him, and then the rest of his time he's able to dedicate to his personal passion, which is naturally connected to the movement. And if we were facilitating more of people's personal passions, I think the movement would be moving a lot more. People would be inspired and feel excited to be a part of what's happening, rather than, again, this kind of very stereotyped idea of what it means to be a devotee and how that looks in your life. So that's the other half, is people who have some passion project that they want some space and time to pursue. And we want to facilitate that. In the farm, the Loka Premadam, we have a great commercial garden going now. And that's because we took a chance on a young man named Bhakta Dylan, who sent me a message 1.5 years ago now, and said, hey, I've always wanted to farm. I saw you guys got some property, maybe I could come down and help you guys do that. And so we gave him some seed funding and the resources, a little bit of manpower to be able to start a community garden. And he did wonderfully. He ran a CSA for a year, feeding 25 families a week for like 20 weeks. And that attracted the attention of an investor who really appreciated the effort that he put in and the quality of the product that was coming out. And so that investment has now gone into the land at Goloka Premadam and been a big part of why we're able to use the property in a nice way today for things like the wedding. So I've noticed that there's a magic when we just trust that Krishna is in people's heart. And instead of having some plan in mind for them already and trying to force them in or cajole them into feeling beholden to our plan, if we find out what's your plan and help them in that, support them in that, that's for me what leadership is and has been most satisfying, trying to encourage. Siddhari Prabhu is another nice example, somebody who's really interested in scholastic pursuits, and he's done a lot of work on a very high academic level. He was a PhD student at University of Michigan before he joined, so he has that aptitude, and he was able to pursue that kind of thing working within our community. So, and it's bearing a lot of fruit in terms of attention and foothold in that academic space, which we know is very important to Prabhupada, but hasn't really had traction in the movement within like the last 25, 30 years. So I really summarize all. For me, leadership has come to mean that I used to think I had to be the star of the show. That was my conception of it. I have to do everything. But really, I have to just make a show that other people can star in. And it's way more fun and it's way more exciting to create that space where many other people can come and live their best life for Krishna.
Something that I got from Tukaram episode, Tukaram Prabhu, that I did was that he was stressing that try to help people around you win
Yeah.
than yourself. And that was like mind blowing to me. Like I never even thought of that. Like, and that's why people like you and people like him are so successful, because you understand that you want other people to win along, like, more than you, and that's what creates a community. And that's so beautiful. I really love that. To kind of like ask you a little bit about maybe the challenges when it comes to that, like maybe financially, like someone, maybe a temple president might be listening to this and saying, hey, I think that's a great idea, but I already got this thing going. I got these deities already. I have all this overhead and things. That's cool that you're doing it and you did it from scratch, but we're like inheriting temples that have a lot of stuff going on already. What would you say to that? Like, what's your kind of, like, because you're the type of person, like, I bet if you're put into a certain situation, you can like work it out and deal with it, because you have that type of, like, build community building and kind of that. Really, I appreciate that a lot. So what would your outlook be on that?
That's an important question. A saying of Prabhupada's, which is a little crude, and that's probably why it always sticks for me. He said, you have to fry the fish in its own oil. You have to fry the fish in its own oil. And it's a very beautiful thing to accept that everyone's situation from the detail side is going to be a little different, but the principle has to be served. And that's what it means to do Dharma. Within Varnashram, everyone's place and position is different. The particulars are what we talk so much about, cows and carrots and seniors and juniors and blah, blah, blah. But we don't well understand the principles. So then we argue about the particulars.
Right.
We can't see the particulars because we're not recognizing the principles that are meant to be served and highlighted by those different procedures. So similarly, in your community right now, what does it mean to really start taking care of devotees? What does it really look like to stop? Kalakanta Prabhu, another wonderful example of someone who lives, and really he kind of shared this ethic at the North American Temple President meeting and gave it words for me. He said at Krishna House, when they really started, the ashram really started moving, now they have 30 people every semester. That really started happening when they stopped praying to Krishna for people to do their projects and instead started praying for people to take care of. Not, please Krishna, send us this person so we can do the prasad, or we can do the Sankirtan ban, or we can do the new Pujari standard, whatever. But please send us people that we can care for. Please send us Vaishnavas that we can serve in whatever way they need. And as soon as he shifted that frame in their community, that now they have 30 people in their ashram and they have no problem with money or resources in terms of manpower. They have a happy, willing crew of Haribol Bhaktas and Bhaktins ready to do Harinam and book distribution and prasad distribution. So it's really the principle first. And if somebody goes into this conversation already having an end in mind, right? Kind of a goal in mind. Yeah, we're going to get this project done because I'm going to take some clever thing that Deva Madhava or Tukaram or Nam Ras said and twist it in, then you're missing the point. That it's really a paradigm shift away from projects and towards people. The Mahaprabhu didn't start a single temple. And this is an irony for me when I go to the temple president meetings and they want to discuss preaching and they want to discuss why the movement seems so stagnant. It's because the whole conversation is around temples instead of people, instead of devotees and relationships. The whole conversation, I'm being a little bit dramatic, but the majority of the conversation and the fundamental conception is still around these buildings and this property and this institution rather than the people. So without that shift happening, the details aren't clear. But when it does, then you can see the resources that you have available to you. Something I've wanted to do here, which I haven't had the time to, but we had a little traction for, is having a live-in launchpad kind of space for young people who are either students, entrepreneurs, social justice types, or ex-military. And you create an ashram basically for them, like ashram light. You charge them $500 a room or whatever, like the going rent is for a single bedroom apartment in your locality. You charge them that much for their rent, and you provide them some prasadam every week. So like 4 or 5 meals covered, a little coaching, counseling, and a little like meditation, a little sadhana practice. Nothing heavy, nothing except Krishna consciousness, but just enough of a sattvic experience that many people out there are looking for today, especially when they're a student or an entrepreneur, for you to solve the problems of their living space, a healthy community to be connected to, some food to eat. You're checking a lot of things off their list there.
Yeah.
We have so many temples that own 10, 12 houses, most of them sitting empty or being rented out to total, uninterested persons in the movement. That's a very simple but powerful way that we could be doing some preaching with those same properties, bringing in income and creating people that are going to be friends of Krishna at least, and maybe become more, maybe become something, deeply integrated into the community.
Wow.
That's one idea. But again, the principle, it's people, not projects. That's the first thing. Start listening more and speaking less. And the answers will be revealed to you. What is that oil that your community has to fry the fish in that will make it a nice thing?
Specifically, when you talk about people and not projects, what are some components of that? Like when you're looking at only, like, let's look only towards people.
Well, I'll take it, our farm situation.
Beautiful farm, by the way. For those of you who haven't been there, please go check it out. It's like Mayapur. Like you look into the fields. Beautiful. I loved it there. I was just sitting there and chanting, and I was just like, this is what farms are meant to be like. I don't hear any cars. I don't hear a highway. I can just like do bhajan, and it was beautiful. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I appreciate that advertisement. That's what we were hoping for. And the wedding was a big impetus to make it look nice. It was like our first big event there since we've had it.
Yeah, people were saying like it doesn't look like this all the time.
If you'd come 2 weeks before, then you'd be saying something a little different, but that's right. How it goes, right? So everybody farm and eco and Prabhupada self-sufficient. That's a thing in our communities, right? And so, and it's a guilt that many people have that there's not more of that. But when I started to examine, all right, what does it really take? I started speaking to people who are farmers and CSA runners and etc. in our area, not devotees necessarily, but just people that do those things. It takes a lot of willpower, a lot of coordination, a lot of dedication, and a certain like just taste for that kind of work. And I wasn't sure if we had any of those things. So I realized that way before a farm, we needed families who were strong and healthy and happy together. So I made a little equation: families before farms, families, and then relationships are greater than resources. These were things that I started to speak about in the community, and other leaders like Uma and Siddhari Prabhu and Vana. And we all got on the same page around these ideas. And we started expressing those to the community, and people started to realize, oh yeah, if we get a thing like a farm, it's not the farm itself that's the goal, it's how that resource is going to facilitate deeper relationships for us, deeper connection, more opportunities to serve. And so creating that sense of the goal even within your people, that the whole point of whatever it is we're doing is to come together and feel satisfied in each other's company. Nothing else. And the satisfaction comes from chanting and hearing the Lord's Leela first. Then, okay, take care of the cows. Then, okay, cook a nice offering, paint a nice mural, whatever the other thing is that you might want to do. First, hear the Lord's Leela and chant his names together. And if you keep those things in the center and build your relationships around it, then the resources that you need in your space to do that in a progressive way with your Sangha, Krishna will make that clear. So when we started really emphasizing healthy families, and we started something called Grihastas Anonymous, which is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek reference to like how embarrassed Grihastas are to be Grihastas and to have the problems that they have.
Right.
and creating a space where people can come together and realize, oh, we're not the only ones that go through this. And actually it's basically normal because everyone else is experiencing the same frustrations that we do. So maybe it's not us, maybe it's just the nature of the thing. And it kind of depressurizes the situation. As soon as you talk about a problem, 50% of it is solved, because it takes it out of this like very personal, pointed experience. Then people started to really lean into each other a lot more than they previously did, when it was just, we meet for programs and we chant Hare Krishna and we recite the Bhagavatam, and that's why we're together. And from that, now so many resources, the farm, the restaurant, another center, and now we're discussing about living in a neighborhood, a Krishna neighborhood. But again, I'm being really careful, and those of us who are helping to kind of guide the discussion on that project, we're being really careful to emphasize that this Krishna neighborhood is not a self-sufficient community to demonstrate to the world simple living and high thinking in the kind of eco-model way that we've all fantasized about. If we can live together for 40 years, that will be our offering to the world and to the movement. Look, we were happy together for 40 years in close proximity.
Right.
Be impressed, because it's hardly done anywhere else. So that's like the benchmark we're shooting for. And it's a very accessible thing for anyone, because many people won't be able to live on the farm. They'll still want to go work in the city. They'll still want to send their kids to a public school, or, some secular school, whatever. But let's all live together. Let's all walk out the front door and be able to sit in kirtan or take prasad, and that be our success. It's more than we grew up with. We're offering our children more than we grew up with. Let's be satisfied in that. And then our children's children can think about self-sufficiency and, living off the land totally, et cetera, because they'll have that foundational experience of the value of community, which we're not even convinced of ourselves yet because we don't live in it. So allowing that experience for ourselves, seeing that that's our real austerity, has been, I think, a strong point of our community, that no project ever usurps that recognition of the importance of relationships that are healthy and respectful.
I remember you were telling me about that Christian neighborhood thing when I was there. Is that something you want to talk about? Or is it like, some people have a thing where like if you say too much, then
Yeah, sure.
So-
I basically shared the idea for it there already. We have now. I take it as my responsibility as the community director that the needed resources to facilitate relationships going deeper and further that's one of my services, is to recruit and to bring in that, or bring in the people that can bring in that, like the example with Dylan being able to do the vegetables.
Right.
So our hope for a Krishna neighborhood is just that we have a semi-rural setting where devotees can live in relatively close proximity. The children can play without having to worry about, who else is around. And if we can create that for ourselves, we'll be very happy. And it's kind of natural over the next 2-3 years, because anyway, people are buying houses now, and families are stabilizing, and people are having children, and people that used to live in the ashram are now maturing. It's just a kind of natural next step that I see. And I haven't seen Krishna deny us at any step when we take it for the right reasons.
Right.
That's one of the things I tell myself all the time. It's never money. The question is it's never money in my experience. Somehow Krishna will send it. We've heard the stories of money falling from the sky, right, for devotees in the old days. And it happens just like that. If you're earnest in your pursuit, if your endeavor is with sincerity. And if it's not happening like that, in my experience, it's Krishna saying, hey, I need you to look at something differently. You're not seeing exactly what I want you to see, the way that it will be wholesome for everyone. I say sometimes Krishna gives you enough rope to tie a knot, but not enough to hang yourself. And so he's slow walking a lot of us with good reason. So
is there sometimes devotees who like to do new things or think in a different way, they feel perhaps sometimes challenged by the authority of ISKCON in the sense of kind of reining them in a little, or kind of keeping things realistic or financially or whatever it is. Have you experienced anything like that? Being like, what's your relationship with the local governing body commission and things like that? Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
Well, I have Malati Prabhu as my GBC, which I feel very fortunate for, because she's a kind of maverick, not kind of. she's, she's the OG maverick of the movement, along with a few others. And she has that mood of live and let live, serve and let serve.
Right.
That how we do things is not exactly how she would do things, but she doesn't mind because she sees the result. That people are becoming Krishna conscious, and things are faithful in general to Prabhupada's mission. I'll admit that I do worry, when Malati Prabhu retires somehow or other, then who is going to be her successor, and what's their mood going to be? Because I know people that have a more problematic relationship with their GBC, despite their own earnestness and their own, capacity to serve, they're stifled. So it's a bit of a concern on our side, but the whole institution itself is a little, it's filled with a sense of self-importance that's unhealthy right now. The whole aftermath of Prabhupada departing and the mistakes that were made has resulted in, among other things, a sense of self-importance for membership within the institution, without looking and examining closely why is that valuable in the first place. Because membership in ISKCON doesn't take you back home, back to Godhead. You don't get to show some identity card at the pearly gates of Goloka and say, I have my visa. It was stamped by ISKCON. That's not how it works. People have and will continue to go back to Godhead without being a member of ISKCON. So the institution doesn't do well right now helping people see that and recognize its own value. Then that's the irony, is that people are expecting ISKCON to do things for them that ISKCON can't do, and in that way distracting people from the things ISKCON can do to help and support them in their
Can you
growth.
give an example? Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Well, the most pointed one would be finding a spiritual master. That the idea that ISKCON has kind of curated a group of people who are safe to take initiation from. And in fact, the only people that you can take initiation from is for some people the idea that's been put out. And it's not that ISKCON is meant to be totally hands-off in that discussion around the relationship between guru and disciple. But Srila Prabhupada, in his 7 purposes of ISKCON, the first and primary, and the one we see him referencing most, aside from maybe book distribution, would be education. Education. ISKCON is an educational institution. So if we think about a university, I'm here at University of Michigan, and the founder of Google comes from the University of Michigan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy that invented Google, one of like 2 guys. Now, the Unabomber also comes from the University of Michigan, the most famous domestic terrorist in the history of America and probably the world. Comes from University of Michigan. University of Michigan doesn't tell anybody about the Unabomber, and nobody asks them about him. Nobody blames University of Michigan for the Unabomber and his escapades, but everybody glorifies them for, creating the guy that created Google, and they're happy to put that on their brochures because they gave the same education to both. And in fact, the Unabomber, he was a mathematician. He was a math guy, and so was the Google guy. I wanted to even look. Maybe they were classmates. Wow, kind of ironic. But the purpose of an institution is education. But that education is to inform relationship, going back to the hallmark of our culture. Why have any of this in the first place is for connection with Krishna and the Vaishnavas. So by being educated within the framework of ISKCON that they could provide, I can then, with my own capacity, go out and make the choice. Who is my spiritual master? Who is not? Who do I trust? Who do I feel close to? And who do I keep my distance from and just offer, folded hands because I see they chant Hare Krishna and they're generally a Vaishnava. So the institution is giving people the unhealthy idea that we can curate for you who's a worthy spiritual master. And then when somebody shows themselves to be maybe not worthy of that role, then the people who took shelter of that person don't have the responsibility of looking at themselves and figuring out why they fell into this situation. Ye tamam prapadyante, why did Krishna lead me into this relationship, which has turned out to be dissatisfying? Instead, they can point the finger at the institution and say, oh, ISKCON said, and it's their fault that now my spiritual life is in the situation it's in. because they said that this person was safe and it turned out that they weren't. So that psychology permeates every other relationship and every other dynamic that we have. We're waiting for ISKCON to be Krishna conscious for us, rather than seeing ISKCON has pooled resources. It's like the library. I can go into the library and I can read a book about anything: model cars, pornography, video games, or I can get one of Prabhupada's books. It's all at the library. So in a similar way, ISKCON is meant to offer a kind of curated library, educational experience. Maybe, again, the university example is probably more appropriate. A curated educational experience that faithfully presents the Siddhanta, but then it's on the individual to apply that. Always has been, always will be. And the attempt of the institution to control that ability of the individual to express themselves, it just continues to create the frustration that we see in people feeling uninspired, disenfranchised, ignored, abused, all the things that we hear too often from the devotees.
I think, I agree with you. I don't like the rubber stamping, curating thing personally. But then also when I talk to people about that, they're like, what's the other option? It's like, okay, we have someone who wants to be a guru, and maybe they're not. And if we don't have that, then they're like kind of just, if they're really charismatic and really cool and have to do nice kirtan or give nice classes, they might not be guru material, but they outwardly look like that and people are attracted to them. And then the person who I was talking to, they say maybe they can be misguided because of that. So what would you...
It's a wonderful question. It's the natural objection, right? That, well, then we're going to end up with a bunch of fake gurus.
Right.
But right now we have a bunch of fake disciples, in the sense that we have disciples depending on an institution to be Krishna conscious for them, which creates a big malaise, right? Just a lethargy, right? Like waiting around for the GBC to wave some magic wand, bippity boppity bhakti. And it's not how it works. And I'm not saying that they're not genuine disciples in that they want to be Krishna conscious, but there's this laziness, this entitlement that's been inculcated into them. So my wife Vrindavani, she has a wonderful saying. She says, every position has its price. Every position has its price. So if we look at the current circumstance where the institution is controlling that guru-disciple relationship, and then that affects every other relationship, temple president and congregant, congregant to congregant, it affects every other relationship, because our relationship with Guru is our relationship with Krishna, is our relationship with everyone else. If that relationship isn't healthy, then no other relationship can be healthy. So if we look at the flip side now, the Purva Paksha, and say, okay, well, if we just let laissez-faire, anyone who wants to be Guru and any disciple that wants to take shelter of them is allowed, that's the system Krishna created. That is the natural atmosphere.
Right.
Krishna's depended on, the devotees have depended on, the parampara has depended on since time immemorial. And yes, there will be cheaters. And yes, there will be sentimental, overzealous disciples. But we have that anyway. And those people right now have the cloak of the disguise of institutional credibility to further hide behind, and to create cronyism, and to create all kinds of things which just make the problem worse. Whereas if it's out in the open and you have some people who take shelter of someone who they shouldn't have, it's on them. That's their problem, not my problem. But at present, if somebody else's spiritual master falls down, my spiritual master is implicated in that mistrust also. The faith and the ability of my spiritual master is now naturally called into question, because somebody else's guru fell down, because they're all tied together in this goofy 3-legged, 900-legged race that we're all trying to run going back to Godhead. My guru is not your guru, and your guru is not my guru. But this idea is again institutionalized, and it's very unhealthy. It's even from a relational standpoint, all other things aside, it's so difficult as Kali Yuga creatures to offer our heart to even one or two people. And I'm supposed to blanket accept 80 or so people as somebody I can trust wholeheartedly and give myself to completely and take anything from as just the pure mercy of God. That's so unreasonable. It's so unnatural. And because people don't have that capacity, you see this very stereotyped, walled off, like protectionist approach, just the Haribol Prabhu Krishna conscious version of Krishna consciousness pervading the society because people are so scared to offer their heart.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, and a lot of devotees I was talking to about this, they referenced your disciple course post on Facebook, which I really appreciated.
Mm.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. So ISKCON, for those of you who don't know, who are not, I have a lot of devotees, all kinds of devotees who listen to this, but we have the ISKCON disciple course. And so this course is a course that you need to take before you take initiation in ISKCON by an ISKCON guru. And so I took this course with my wife, who was required to take the course just for out of curiosity and to be with her and to do it. And it was a very interesting experience, to say the least. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that course and some of the aspects of it that we find challenging, or you find challenging, first of all.
Sure. Well, you've taken it, so I've only heard from people that have taken it. Some of my candidates here who wanted to take initiation from various spiritual masters, they had to take it at that point. It wasn't institutionalized when I was coming through. And unfortunately, I've had 4 different people decide that they don't want to take initiation after taking this.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's out of a pool of like maybe 14 or so total who have come through here, and we've been their connecting point, so to speak, their official connection. That's a pretty big percentage of sincere people who went away after reading some of the, it's basically a terms of agreement. You know, if you read that thing that websites put up and ask you to click agree on before you go into the website, if you actually read that thing, you probably wouldn't go in the website. Like, I'm selling my soul to, and they can do with me what they will, but just for me to see this picture, I'm going to click agree. So when people were in that course, their general experience, as they reported back to me, was that they basically had to disavow any appreciation for another sangha. They had to see their own spiritual master as a kind of like placeholder for Srila Prabhupada rather than their spiritual master. And Prabhupada is their spiritual master. There was this, it's like Ridvik light, basically, just one step away from the Ridvik Vad, that Prabhupada is the only spiritual master. The current guru is considered a kind of placeholder for you, or, you know, some kind of facilitator, but not really your spiritual master. And none of these things were how I presented Krishna consciousness to them, because I was presenting what Prabhupada presents in his books. And so the idea of a disciples course itself is quite healthy, I think. And I remember people being excited to go into it, thinking, great, I would like to know more about what is expected and what does it mean to be a disciple. But what it became within ISKCON is an ISKCON membership course. Sign the terms of agreement, say the Pledge of Allegiance for being a member of ISKCON, which is not necessarily the same thing as being a good Gaudiya Vaishnava disciple. The two are not the same. They can be opposed. And that's unfortunately what's becoming more and more the case, is that the hallmarks of a healthy Gaudiya Vaishnava are not the hallmarks of a card-carrying ISKCON member. And that's a big problem.
That's a good distinction to make, that they're not the same thing. No. I felt when taking the course, from what I remember, there was a lot of quotations of like letters of Prabhupada saying, you know, like when you said appreciation of other sanghas and things like, you know, stay away from my god brothers. There's like one letter that he wrote to one person, and they were like, okay, you got to do that. And then at the end, I was like, it seems that you're quoting a lot of letters, and it's kind of just like making it up as you go, kind of just like trying to fit whatever message that you want to come across, like put across, you just find a letter for that specific situation. They're like, yeah, it is kind of like that. They're being honest with me, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyways, I appreciate some of the things that were said in there for sure, but a lot of it was things that I did have issues with. I guess when we were talking earlier, you said that you feel like the relationship with the guru is like where the most of the issues are coming from. For all of ISKCON, perhaps even. Could you elaborate on that? Like, what do you mean exactly?
Well, it's our Siddhanta that I'm not making, it's not me. I'm just pointing out the natural, it's kind of like the situation with the cows on the planet right now and how much reaction we see going on in the world, and how, I'm not sure if you saw that movie Cowspiracy, but
Yeah, I did.
yeah, it's an excellent film. And the conclusion is the worst thing that we're doing as humans right now, among all the bad things we're doing, is the way that we're treating Mother Cow, which is a proof in the negative of the power of a positive relationship with the cow, right? That's actually substantiation for our claim, which is that there's a mystic level of kind of auspiciousness that can come into human society if the relationship with cow is wholesome. The proof in the negative is going on at the moment. And so our Siddhanta is that your relationship with your spiritual master is the benchmark for your existence. If you've taken initiation, then your relationship with that person determines your relationship with everyone else, and the most important person, also Krishna. So then within our own society, if we have these shackles put on the institution of guru, where we're allowing, and let's just take it to the place where most people are most familiar, this idea of women Diksha gurus. That is itself a red herring. That's a distracting discussion. The idea that should we let women initiate? There's no question of that being allowed. If you're allowing women to act as Shiksha gurus, which we are. Srila Prabhupada and Krishnadas Kaviraj are both very clear in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 1, the spiritual master, right? Why does that, the summum bonum of all Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy and Leela, the first chapter is a discussion about the spiritual master because of the primacy of that relationship. And what do both our acharyas say there? If you make a distinction between Diksha and Shiksha, then you're making an offense. So if you're going to allow women to preach, to share Krishna consciousness, to advocate for others to trust them, trust me, do like me, be like me, and then you say, whoa, wait a minute, but you can't sit in front of a fire with them and hand them a set of japamala and give them a new name. You can't do that.
Yeah. Then
you're creating hypocrisy. You've now baked into the institutional framework offense to guru. It's a institutionalized policy. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a policy to offend Guru Tattva in ISKCON right now. And what can we expect the result of that to be? How are we supposed to chant Shuddhanam? How are we supposed to relate well with the world? How are we supposed to do service for Krishna in a wholesome, cooperative way? If I'm offending my guru or others, spiritual masters, then I'm naturally not going to have a wholesome relationship with my temple president. And I was discussing this yesterday with one temple president here in North America, a dear friend of mine, somebody I admire, somebody who's really fighting the good fight. And we were discussing how in the temples, there's this malaise, as I've already brought up also, where it's so mind-boggling and frustrating. It's the hardest part of being a community leader, is that you have to tell people to do things they should want to do. You have to tell people to go to Bhagavatam class. You have to tell people to go on Harinam and clean up after themselves and like all of that. It's like there's some element of that that's naturally there, but it's to an unhealthy degree. There's this dependency on being told what to do at every moment. It's this kind of sycophantic dependency. And that comes from this need of the institution, this culture that the institution has created. We will tell you who is guru. We will tell your gurus how they should behave, how they should instruct you, how they should mete out your service. And that trickles down then into temple president and congregant and person they're preaching to. It pervades every relationship. Any problem that you see anywhere is actually a symptom of that dynamic. And I'll go into the edgy realm of the current issue with one prominent ISKCON sannyasi and the child protection issues that have come up around that case. If you look at that circumstance, the real issue here is that he's a spiritual master approved by the institution.
Right.
It would be completely unnatural and inappropriate to tell earnest disciples of his who want to continue being his earnest disciples, it would be completely out of the question to tell them that he can't be their guru anymore.
Doesn't make any sense to
Doesn't
me.
make any sense. It's absurd.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think it's safe to say it's a natural and obvious thing to do to make sure that that person has no official formal leadership position in ISKCON anymore. No more temple president, no GBC, no on the board of anything. I think that's, for most people, a natural thing that should happen. But because the guru element is conflated with an institutional position, now there's all this confusion and all this waiting and make a committee and just treading water, trying to avoid the awkward circumstance we've made for ourselves.
How do we get ourselves out of like this 35, whatever, 40-year kind of web that we've wound ourselves into?
Martin Luther King said that it's always the right time to do the right thing. This is the beauty of the Mahabharata, which I recently read. I'd never read it before, and it was a big mistake because it's brought so much insight into the Bhagavad Gita and just social dynamics. And Yudhisthira is the hero of the Mahabharata, actually, because he always chooses Dharma. He always depends, even no matter how absurd and against the odds it looks that Dharma would win and adharma or some other convenient choice, more expedient choice would be the smarter, wiser thing to do in this particular situation because it's so unique and it's so special and we need to make a concession here. No, Yudhisthira, every time, without doubt, without fail, Dharma, and everything works out. Krishna is by Yudhisthira's side at the end and everywhere else in that book, in those pastimes. And so it's never the wrong time to say, if you want to take shelter of someone and that person wants to offer it to you, then that's between you guys. Now, how another technical point, technical, but kind of structural point. This is where the temple president role again becomes very important in ISKCON in a way that it hasn't been in decades, but it was when Prabhupada was around. The temple president was counted on to be curating the local sangha. So if you have some goofball who says he's initiating and he's got 80, followers and their sadhana every day is to sit naked by the local river and chant their japa, it's on the local temple president to say, thanks guys, but you can stay by the river.
Right.
You can't come in here. You can't come into our temple with that idea of things because that's not how we've approached it, right?
Right. I see what you're saying.
Again, the temple presidents and local leadership have responsibility to care about their people, to look into their lives, to understand what's going on, what's their understanding. Are they really following, or do they just have that thread around their chest? Because that's all anyone knows these days. I know so many nonsense people on the altar right now, and so many bhaktas who belong up there compared to the nonsense people. Because all we look at, okay, they have the thread, so-and-so's disciple for 20 years, good enough. But if you de-institutionalize the guru relationship, then suddenly the onus comes to the local leadership again to be very careful about who you're letting in to speak and to worship and to lead the kirtan and to interact with your people. And that gives that role power that the local congregants, local members of the community need to see in someone. They need to see someone who has vision, has ability, has the capacity to make choices, not somebody sitting thousands of miles away in a boardroom and once a year they roll out, this long treatise of declarations that nobody then pays attention to. They need in front of them somebody they feel is a capable decision maker, ready to make decisions about good and bad things that happen. And that would again put the responsibility back into that role if you decentralize the guru relationship.
This is fantastic. You've obviously thought a lot about this. What challenges do you foresee in implementing this kind of change, you could say?
I have thought about a lot. The last 2.5, 3 years, this has been my overwhelming concern.
Is that just to interject there? Have you been thinking about it because it's something you've observed and you saw like this is a real issue?
Yeah, it's the way my mind works. That's like I'm not particularly good at anything, and I laugh like the wedding recently and like Janmashtami. I didn't know what to do with myself on Janmashtami because everybody else was doing the things that need to be done. I don't.
Successful leader right there, because everyone's doing something and you're not doing. You're the one from the back pushing everybody. Hey, but I think I heard it from you. Even you said it like you don't know what to do. Like Ujjwal's the better at giving class than you, and someone's doing better kirtan than you. Someone is washing pots better than you. You've put that whole thing together. That's a testament to your leadership.
That's one way to see it, but another way is that Krishna wanted me, somebody who really knows what they're doing in all those roles, and so he sent them to humble me because I thought I knew what I was doing. But anyway, to come back to the question, structurally, I stay up at night like thinking about Prabhupada's movement and wanting to serve my spiritual master. He said, make the ideal situation in Ypsilanti, and that's a tall order, but it's one I cherish because it's something to live for. There's Radhanath Maharaj likes to say, if you don't have something you're willing to die for, you have nothing to live for. So I Guru Mukha Padma Vakya. And when I was, why is it so damn hard to do something nice in ISKCON? When you meet individual devotees, they're so sweet, they're so capable, they're so kind, they're so sincere. Why is it so difficult? What is this malaise? What is this cloud over everyone's head? And this is in my introspection and examination and inquiry and hearing. This is what it comes to. Our relationship with Guru is our relationship with everyone else. And because there's this fundamental deviation from the natural culture of Guru Tattva, then ISKCON is becoming increasingly defunct. And it's sad, but as again, overnight, today, right now, we could undo that policy. There's many reasons why that won't happen. And so then what to do in the meantime? I don't really care anymore if the person is approved by ISKCON or not in terms of their spiritual status as an initiating spiritual master. Because the system that Krishna has set up is already functioning. You can't make it not function. It's like the discussion around Varnashram. It's a mistake to think we have to establish Varnashram. Varnashram is existing. It's just existing in a hapless way because people don't recognize the dynamics there. But there's still Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and Brahmanas in every society on the planet. Similarly, Krishna's system of natural sharing of affection and trust between guru and disciple, that's going on all over the planet. It's going on in ISKCON because that's what Prabhupada wanted to see happening. That's why he established it. So to just acknowledge that and give permission for a person to say, I know people that are initiated by people that are not ISKCON initiating spiritual masters, and you do too, but they still function within ISKCON, and there's a kind of like tongue-in-cheek or like underground railroad of discipleship happening. And I say keep going and don't I make an advertisement right now. Anybody that wants to come that's faithful and you'll be subject to my vetting. But if you want to come to the Harmony Collective and have an initiation ceremony, especially a woman, because that will be the biggest demonstration of the need for this to change. If there's a woman who's ready to give Diksha publicly, then we're ready to host you, not as a spectacle, but as a demonstration of what's happened already. We're not letting you do anything. We just want people to celebrate and see what you've already done, which is put Krishna in the heart of someone who now wants to say thank you in its most committed and profound way. And so again, subject to our vetting as a community, we're happy to have you and to host that ceremony and to celebrate that relationship with you and your disciple or disciples.
ISKCON India is listening and ready to descend upon Ypsilanti. Anyway, just another plug. In the first week of October, Garuda Prabhu and Bashu Ghosh Prabhu are going to come on and debate.
Ooh.
I'm going to be moderating it. They're like, hey, we want to come on and talk about women dictators. I was like, okay, let's do it. As long as you guys are respectful. And they're like, yeah, we're super respectful. Don't worry about it. So in October, they're going to come on and talk about women Diksha gurus. It should be interesting.
That'll be a must-see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Anyway, I hear a lot of devotees, probably more young people, say, I love my guru, but ISKCON, I can be within ISKCON, but I'm not gonna like really interact with the institution, because my guru is like, I love my guru and it's all about my guru, and I trust them. But when it comes to him being part of ISKCON, it's like I'm not so sure about that. And I see devotees like yourself who are really trying to like make it a better place and a more acceptable to the newer generation, the Gurukuli generation. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. What do you feel is like the issue there, and how to fix that, even, or does it need to be fixed even? Because I personally feel that myself. I don't like to like really say my opinions on things on the show just because I'm a like, it's like a journalistic thing, but I do
And you do
sometimes.
a wonderful job of that, by the way.
Thank
I
you,
feel like
thank you.
that's one of the things I really admire about you on this show.
Thank you. But I do feel like that sometimes. Like I did my part in being in the ashram and trying to do my thing, but it's just I got so many walls, and it's just like my life is so short. I'm only like 36. I don't have much time left. I gotta like get going with my spiritual life, with my family and things. So, what do you think about that?
I'll take it back to something I said earlier, which was that my guru is not your guru. And when ISKCON puts a rubber stamp on a guru and says this is who's approved and authorized, there's a subtle implication that all of us have to accept all those people as that position of guru in our heart. And that's so unnatural. It's so unhealthy. It's antithetical to how that relationship is meant to be. The living entity, we're little jivas. We don't have much. Our capacity is minute. So our capacity to trust and truly give of ourselves is limited, and it's meant to only be within a very small community, sangha, and with a few people. So then when you think about ISKCON, and I'm over here in North America and I have to accept ISKCON India, it becomes so difficult. I don't mind ISKCON India for the most part, but that implication for most people, I have a broad kind of global way of thinking. It's easy and natural for me, but for most people, it's not. It scares the hell out of them. And the implication that I have to accept these other 300,000 people when I accept my spiritual master is intimidating and terrifying. And it creates one of two things often. Either one, the people don't. They stay around and they stay nearby, but they never commit. Or two, they commit, but they remain very aloof, very distanced and guarded in their dealings with the Sangha, because it's too scary to jump in otherwise. This is also the problem with the internet, frankly. We're not meant to be hearing and seeing from so many different people in so many different places. Look at Chaitanya Charitamrita. You want to go hear from a sadhu, you have to walk. Right? You got hundreds, thousands of miles of footsteps in between you and that sadhu to meditate and conceive of the surrender that you're going to offer them when you get there. Today, I just click. And if I don't like, I click again, and I click and I click and I click and I scroll. And that's my surrender. It's such a overexposure of relationship. Most people can't manage it. And ISKCON isn't helping anybody by creating this hegemon of personalities that we all have to accept.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating points, Prabhu. Let's look at the comment section. For those of you listening, I'm going to start.
I forgot about that.
Probably a good time to take questions now for Deva Madhava Prabhu. Some really amazing points have been mentioned here on the talk here. So this is from the beginning. Is that placed under GBC or managed separately? This is regarding the Harmony Collective. So I think you mentioned it. Yeah, that Malati Prabhu is the GBC. My 1 year at the Harmony Collective is the best I've had in my 9 years of Krishna Consciousness. Look at that testimony right there. Thank you so much for that. Okay, question here. How do you facilitate those service, life, dream, quest conversations after programs and environments when other senior devotees eavesdropping might not be on the same page with respect to withholding judgment and emphasizing encouragement?
Yeah, well, the proof is in the pudding, as Srila Prabhupada said. We have vegetables now because we did this. We have somebody who's able to translate Sanskrit because we did this. We have substantiation for the value of the Puranas within a secular scientific frame because we took on this ethic. So I'm really at a place in my own, our community is at a place where it's like, it's working. And if somebody disagrees or thinks that it's not working, then prove it yourself by doing something different. And we'll follow you if it becomes something powerful and worthy, but like it's working for us. So we're going to keep doing it that way. There's again, this idea that the institution has to like tell people what's good for them and what they should be doing, rather than like trusting that Krishna is in everyone's heart. And the sign of someone's advancement is that they become independently thoughtful. Using Srila Prabhupada's language, they become independently thoughtful about how can I push on this mission? How can I do something for Mahaprabhu and my spiritual master? It's a it's a stunted experience that it always has to come straight from the authority of the institution, whatever. That spontaneity and self-moved impetus is the hallmark of somebody making advancement. So I want to encourage that and see that. And naturally people will fail and make mistakes. And, we've gone the wrong direction sometimes, but when you're being faithful, then you're sensitive to Krishna and Guru indicating, hey, turn around or go the other direction, or something else needs to be added. You're sensitive to that. So it's self-correcting when you're with the parampara.
I would love to hear the realization on maintaining a focused vision while also bringing in a variety or people with different needs, agendas, etc. Or is it more adaptation to the needs of the community? What are the boundaries with that? Nice question.
Yeah, nice question. And Odaria, she's doing this wonderful service of running a school. So that's a very, that's a double-edged sword, because on one side, it provides a very clear purpose and goal, right? The children's well-being, providing a wholesome education. On the other side, then, that, people's needs and interests, concerns otherwise may have to get sacrificed on the altar of having a nice school. So the tension there, I think for you specifically, Odaria, the school is the reason that you're together, and the wholesome experience of having the school is a natural kind of thing to give deference to. In our situation, and you guys are trending more towards a community in general, just a strong sangha of like-minded devotees centered around taking care of your children in this wholesome way with the school. So as that begins to roll out, you can become a lot more laissez-faire, hands-off about the other elements, how other things go, and how people choose to approach different other ideas about Krishna conscious culture. Those become less important to like kind of manage hands-on. Just trust that if you're taking care of the school in a nice way, showing the example there, then the other things will work themselves out in a healthy way. And for us, that's always been at the center, our community center. We like to think that we have strong programs where there's quality katha and kirtan. And what's the purpose of a Krishna conscious community if not to create strong experiences of Krishna katha and kirtan? So that's our goal. That's our focus. That's what we're here for. And we emphasize that both in bringing people who can provide that, but then also trying to nourish each other in developing our ability to do that. And that has allowed the other things that people are concerned with at different times to keep their natural subordinate position. And it's okay if people get a little excited about something that's a bit of a tangent for a little while, because the power of katha and kirtan will always bring it back.
Very nice. I heard you guys are implementing Kalash Abhisheks there at Harmonized. Sorry, I just had to say that. Oh my gosh. Too funny. Anyway.
We wanted you to come and be the pujari.
Question 2, what are some of the things we can do to build a network of Krishna conscious friendly or Krishna conscious supportive dharmic professionals?
That's a really wonderful question. I mean, somebody's just got to do it, right? The Friends of Krishna vibe. I was discussing this with my friend a few days ago, who I mentioned, temple president, that I admire, and appreciate their effort. They're involved right now in aggregating therapists and counselors and coaches who are like, devotee approved. They're either devotees themselves or devotees have worked with them and they felt really helped by them. And so that they're providing that. The mental health issue is its own serious question, and just the level of harassment that people have experienced. And Deva Madhava has a beautiful lecture, Cracking a Western City. It's like a 3-part seminar. The first third of this seminar, he just spends trying to convey to people, mostly his godbrothers and older devotees, trying to convey to them how different today's young people are from the hippies, right? The level of harassment and exposure to sensual stimulation and mistrust of authority and etc. How dramatically different, how much worse it is now. And that's just 15 years ago. This was before social media practically, when Maharaj was giving this discussion. So what to speak of now when kids are growing up with a drug in their hands? So the need for mental health and that kind of permission, this is another ashram you could have as a detox ashram. You're not coming for sadhana yet. You don't deserve to think about sadhana. You're not, deserves the wrong word, but you're not ready to think about steady sadhana yet. You just need to get clear with all the junk that you've been avoiding your whole life.
I think Wisdom of the Sages does that, I believe.
What's that?
Wisdom of the Sages.
Yeah, great point.
They have some anonymous addiction, anonymous something or other that they do like before they get into. I think simultaneously maybe, but yeah, the great point.
Yeah. So yeah, just having it to the devotees' question, this would just be great to take the initiative if you know people worthy of being on that list. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Question 3, is there a Grihastha anonymous model for Grihasthas in mixed relationships when one partner is a devotee, one partner is not a devotee, but is supportive?
No, we don't have anything formal yet on that Grihasthas Anonymous program. In fact, we haven't done it in a little while, and it's now I'm feeling the need to reinvigorate that. I myself went through a divorce, so it's a little awkward to be promoting a Grihastha program, but I learned a lot of lessons through that. That could be that's another discussion. But I certainly all of these dynamics are nuanced, and that's something to really like. All these questions that you're bringing out, that's a little different, right? Somebody's a devotee, the other's not a devotee, and there are successful people who have made that work in very beautiful ways. It's not a death sentence, so to speak, but it is harder. And to just be able to be honest about that, we have a saying in our community, chant and be honest, right? Come and tell us what's really going on, and then we can really help you. But if you're just hiding what's going on, you're not telling the doctor what's up, what's the situation, then the doctor can't necessarily prescribe the right medicine. So yeah, for even same-sex couples, that's a whole arena that we're just both in the preaching field and internally in our community, we just have our heads in the sand about. And it's so sad to not see us supporting that community the way our philosophy is uniquely empowered to be able to support those people and encourage them and let them live their life materially while really making strides spiritually. We're practically the only ones that it's philosophically permissible for us to do that. And our heads are in the sand. It's so embarrassing. It's so sad. So Hare Krishna. Yeah, all these nuances deserve our attention and deserve being allowed to happen.
Question 4, have you had any thoughts or experiences around formally pooling resources to help retain families locally so tough times don't drive them away? I've always been intrigued by how the LDS Church supports families through unemployment.
Yeah, important question. We have tried, this is a shift we made now that this question is kind of reminding me of an explicit shift that we made back in like 2015 or 16. We started saying we're no longer going to treat ashram people, those living inside and those living outside. We know this kind of like second-class citizen vibe, right? Like you live outside, so we can't help you. We can't support you. We stopped that. And instead we started providing for our outside people as much as we provide for the inside people, as much as we can. So we've given cars, we've allowed people to stay in the ashram, have like 2 rooms in the ashram, a family, for a couple months at a time in between spots or whatever. If we can, we do. And it's inculcated faith in people. People like, I'm going to get taken care of as best they can, right? And that's the irony, is that everyone knows ISKCON is not in a position to take care of people very well, but at present, the institution is not taking care of people as well as it could, right? So if you're not doing your best, then you're going to invoke the ire and mistrust of people, rightly so. So without even having to come up with formal programs, if you just do your best to provide what you've been provided, you offer that to your people, people will appreciate that and they'll notice. Would it be wonderful to have formal programs? Yes. My first angle with that is going to be our Next Generation Council, which is a program we're developing for young people, mostly who've been born in the movement, and that ashram experience we were mentioning earlier, to have a fund, basically a trust for them to make applications for micro grants and scholarships and loans to be able to pursue passions that they have. They want to travel, they want to start photography, they want to take a course. Well, here's $800 or $2,000 to do it. Here's the resources you need to make that happen without having to, go work a job at Starbucks for 6 months or whatever to be able to.
Wow. I love that about not making that inside person and an outside person, just like really making that equal, because that's like investing in people, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Not that you do it for like, oh, this person might become a multimillionaire in the future and help us, like, but you're just like you're like creating a member forever practically. You're going to create a well-wisher, a member, a supporter for their lives, their whole life, basically, because you were there for them when they maybe had a hard time or something like that. I think that's so wonderful, to be honest. And I feel like that's something that we should do a lot more, because it's people focused, essentially.
Absolutely. It's our opportunity. We have the capacity to serve, then we should.
Right.
And people, as you're pointing out, they'll notice that, they'll remember that.
Right. Just wanted to see this comment. This is so encouraging. My husband and I are starting a little offering, a place to share bhakti, and I'm scared with the money already. Listen to the earlier part. I don't know if you were listening, but we discussed that. Okay, let's see. Any other questions here?
Yeah, just a little thing about that. I mean, it's wonderful to have a sovereign space.
Yeah.
But Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision of the Nam Hut, it's very prescient. The idea that you don't need temples, you don't need to have a storefront, so to speak. You can, in your home, you can create that temple experience for people. And the irony is, we see like Airbnb and Uber, these Netflix, these institutions which decentralized the industry that they were addressing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had that vision 140 years ago. But still, somehow, we're so anchored to this idea that you need a temple, you need a center in order to be able to preach. Not saying, I'm sorry, Yamanuja, maybe you guys are at that place now where that's where your Sangha is, and that's beautiful, that's exciting. But so many people are out there who never belong thinking about having a temple or having a preaching center or whatever, but you can still share Krishna consciousness with so many people. Accepting that ethic of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, do it in your home.
If one must follow the order of the spiritual master with one's life and soul, then Diksha Guru is by definition a leadership position, correct? I guess this is when we were discussing.
Oh, I see. So this is so the institution, again, maybe this question is speaking to the idea of one can be a guru without having a formal leadership position. So again, that's where ISKCON has, it's sticky, it's difficult, but to draw that line, institutional leadership, temple president, GBC, trustee, board member, etc., you draw that line between that and spiritual leadership. So to just flesh it out from that example I gave, that person is barred from anything institutionally. That person's disciples are still able to have that person's Sangha, take that person's guidance, and do it faithfully. And again, according to the local temple president's flavor and the local Sangha, that person's disciples can serve faithfully, can contribute, and can sit on the Vyasa-san, can hold board positions, etc. But making that separation between the institution sanctioning whether or not someone can be a guru, makes all those decisions much easier. Because when you conflate them, then you get the confusion that we see now, where it's clearly so unnatural to say that now they're not a guru. And at the same time, it would be quite awkward to allow the person to continue in any formal leadership position.
Interesting comment here. What about people who think they have a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada's total teachings than senior devotees who have been studying and doing sadhana in a dedicated way for so many years?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of thinking if they have a better understanding or not, or if they do have a better understanding or not.
I guess this is a follow-up.
What's that?
I think this is the next part of that. Is there any hypocrisy in thinking that you have most perfectly understood Prabhupada's authority even without any hermeneutics for an integrated interpretation? Is there any hypocrisy in wielding your interpretation of cherry-picked quotes to label senior devotees as hypocrites? What's hermeneutics again? I hear that word a lot.
Sure, yeah. I don't know if it's fair to say that I have no hermeneutical background or have made an attempt to, we haven't gotten into that discussion so much, but hermeneutics means how you understand that which is trying to be understood. And then specifically within a religious context, some devotees say you can't read Prabhupada's letters. Only the books. You've heard that before, right? Only what's in purports, that's what Prabhupada wants you to know. And the letters you can't involve, or the morning walks you can't involve. So that's a hermeneutical choice. So how to parse it, Prabhupada said no harmonium. But then we see people playing the harmonium, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta hated the harmonium, whereas Prabhupada would play it sometimes.
Right.
So do we make a rule out of that? That would be a hermeneutical decision. Maybe not a good one, but that's hermeneutics.
Okay.
So I certainly people have and will continue to say that I'm overstepping with some of the things I've shared here, but I'm on a mailing list that's comprised solely of a group of Prabhupada disciples who have been bringing this same point that I brought today to the GBC for the last 15 years.
Really?
So I've done my homework. I've asked around. I'm not just pontificating.
Right.
I've received something that I feel is wholesome and valuable, and I've met many senior devotees who feel the same way and are in different ways trying to advocate for this very simple and the sovereign way that Krishna has arranged it. They're trying to advocate for that, but they're also being ignored and dismissed and whatever. So that's my point, is that ignored and dismissed, but still Krishna's arrangement can't help but go on. So those of us who really value it and want to see it happening kind of more externally, we just have to highlight that it already is. It's not a question of who approves and who doesn't approve. It's happening. And to highlight that and make that clear is the most powerful way to help everyone else get on board and recognize, oh, it won't be the end of the world. It'll actually be the beginning of things happening substantially again.
Thinking out loud here, with decentralized guruship, it seems like advocating anarchy. What is there the need of ISKCON at all then?
Property protection, intellectually and physically. That's clearly what Prabhupada saw the primary focus of the institution to be, was maintain the properties according to Pancharatric standards and make sure that my books are propagated and safe. And again, if those things are being done, then education is the main service. ISKCON as a university is the way to kind of consider it, that you come and you take a disciple course. How to be a good Gaudiya Vaishnava disciple, that's a beautiful course to teach. How to be a good member of ISKCON, less so. So how to be a good Gaudiya Vaishnava, and then if that person takes that course and feels inspired by a person who is, within the ISKCON community, great. And if they feel inspired by somebody outside of the ISKCON community, we should feel great. University of Michigan isn't mad when one of their students graduates and then teaches at Harvard. They put that on their resume also. They advertise that we have these many people over at Harvard and this many people over at Yale. And because there's a recognition of the value of those institutions outside of this like silly fundamentalist idea that we're the only way. So to present the information authoritatively and to be the authority on presenting the information, if ISKCON were to make itself that, then naturally we would attract so many wholesome, capable people. But we both know many, especially people in our generation, who started out in ISKCON and then went away.
Yeah.
Because they said, no thanks, way too suppressive, way too institutional, not my style. And they went and took shelter of someone else, not necessarily because their heart wasn't with somebody in the ISKCON Sangha, but because the institutional expectations were just suppressive. And they saw the writing on the wall. And so they said, no, thank you.
Right. I just wanted to clarify this. This comment was, I got a message here that that comment was directed at someone who was implicitly critiquing Deva Madhava Prabhu. That wasn't directed at you personally. She said, could you please clarify that I very much know that Deva Madhava knows what hermeneutics are and has done his homework. So just to clarify that. Sorry about that.
Cool, yeah.
The reason is because I don't see comment threads per se and replies and things for all of who are watching this. I just see the comments like one by one in a very linear way. So I don't know who's replying to who. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. Let's see here.
And I appreciated that question. Actually, I was glad to be able to answer. It's kind of Purva Paksha, so
sure.
I took it in that way when it was being presented.
Yes. Okay, here. We see more and more that inspired devotees are starting and running programs to serve specific purposes or groups of devotees. This seems a natural and healthy development. Is there any need for such programs to be in some way tethered to ISKCON so that the movement benefits from the vitality and energy of such initiatives and doesn't continue to feel static and possibly outdated? Nice question. Yeah,
it is a good question. Some of the things I've started are ISKCON, and some of the things that we've started and are continuing are not formally ISKCON. So that's another fry the fish in its own oil question. And I would say chances are it shouldn't be ISKCON. Chances are that it should be next to ISKCON, but not directly ISKCON, because again, there's this tendency to expect ISKCON to do too much. Right. And we there's this
like even in that subtle way of just like, oh, this is an ISKCON approved.
That's right. Thing. There's this paternalism that the institution has inculcated in us, and that we have accepted that ISKCON has to live every aspect of my life for me, and that's what it means for me to be Krishna conscious. Rather than, again, recognizing ISKCON has educated me. And that's, if I offer my obeisances to everyone who's ever contributed anything to ISKCON because of the education I received, the understanding that relieved that, broken-hearted 20-something that was homeless in Detroit. That's because of ISKCON, and I recognize that. And I honor that and want to offer that education for everyone. And if that education becomes the focus, then the natural result will be people like myself. I'm not special, but it's sad to me that I'm the only person in the last 30 years that started a community in North America that's sustained. I'm like the only one, practically speaking, aside from, there's certain other projects you could talk about, but the kind of like organic pop-up, we're like the only show that's done that in the last 30 years. And that shows real signs of unhealthy dynamics.
Yes.
And so again, going back to like, what is ISKCON's mandate? Education. Give the Siddhanta in a faithful way from people that are faithful themselves, practicing. And then people will be able to work it out. Trust in Guru and Krishna, trust in the Parampara, trust in the Sangha, the Vaishnavas, to allow the rest to happen in a very healthy way. And then we don't have to have this membership-based idea. Is it ISKCON? Is it not ISKCON? Is it approved? We'll know, is it approved or not? Because we were educated. We know what's good and what's not good ourselves. We don't need a board to be telling us. And then we'll be able to make healthy choices and align ourselves with healthy organizations that are supportive to ISKCON's purposes.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I've really been struggling with, because I've had Padmanabh Maharaj on, and like the first question someone tells me is like, "Oh, what part of ISKCON? Where is he? ISKCON? Where is he from? From ISKCON? Is he from ISKCON? Is he? Where is it? Which ISKCON center is he from?" I'm like, listen to what this Prabhu Maharaj is saying. Like, listen to the nectar that is, he is so fantastic Vaishnava. What does it matter if he's ISKCON or not? Like, do your own homework. Do your own homework and figure out yourself if this is someone that you should hear from, and this is someone you should, take their advice, or is this is a sadhu? Why does it have to be that kind of? Anyways, rant over. But
Mitra Prabhu, the Prabhupada disciple?
Yeah, of course.
He had this really clever cartoon a few years ago. It was like Narad Muni and Vyasa.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Walking into a temple. Sorry, Prabhu, you can't give class.
You can't give class. You're not ISKCON. Narad Muni, I think it was the Vyasadeva and Narad Muni, and they're like, what?
All right, well.
Man, okay. Okay, is there books that he recommended about community care? Or books that in general he recommended? Sorry, my English. Any books that you recommend regarding community?
Godram Kalpatavi, which is a couple letters that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote to his Bhakti Vriksha members. It's something that Jai Tak Maharaj and the Congregational Development Ministry put together. And in there, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision for the Nam hut is laid out really beautifully. And I consider Bhaktivinoda the architect of our culture. Prabhupada built the house the whole world could live in. But in order to build such a grand house, first there has to be an architectural blueprint. And the person that created that blueprint was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Prabhupada is the ongoing contractor of the project, who's going out and finding the yous and the me's and his disciples and the future disciples to come and fill in do the electricity, do the plumbing, do the painting, do the masonry. That's what the contractor does. And Prabhupada is brilliant at that execution. Bhaktivinoda Thakur laid out the shape of what our culture should look like. In that book, Godram Kalpatavi, it's made really clear by the Congregational Development Ministry, the different roles that people can play, how those roles support each other, and how they're dependent on one another. And it allows you to really appreciate the different ways that different people are contributing. There's also a person, Marianne Williamson, who's a secular, she has her spiritual side, but her writings are, no, not Marianne Williamson. That's Course on Miracles, I think. Who am I thinking of? I'm gonna draw a blank. But the secular world loves this word community now. I got into a taxi in Philadelphia off of a plane with a lady who owns an ice cream company. She was telling me about community. And it was like it really struck me. I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Prabhu. It really struck me that somebody who sells ice cream could be using the same word as I do when I'm trying to, share Krishna consciousness. So making sure we have a substantial understanding of the word community and not just this like commercialized, trendy version of the word community. I'll just leave it there. Godram Kalpatavi is the first book that comes to mind for me.
Sure.
And then the Chaitanya Charitamrita as a vision of community. That's the other thing I wanted to say. That this is our archetype. This is our example. In our Harmony Collective community, we have the CC, which is our cabinet and council. Those are the people. The cabinet is the decision makers, the executives, and then the council are people chosen by the local community members to represent them. They're kind of like the Brahminical presence, the third party. When the cabinet are making decisions, the council is there to let us know how the community is feeling. So the CC, as that acronym stands for, we're wanting to model the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the CC, in our dealings, and that's our meditation. How can we create more of that atmosphere that's evinced in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? So that is our community building manual, is how the Vaishnavas deal with each other in the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Beautiful. If the institution is about education and standard setting, does that mean the local representatives of ISKCON would be qualified before starting a temple project, having Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti Vedanta titles?
I think that's a natural thing to expect or institutionalize. I think that we see in Prabhupada's writings, he did want that of people he saw as holding leadership positions, that they have be firmly grounded in the Shastra. So I think that's a healthy expectation. You know, if you wanted to change something right now and you weren't going to change the guru thing, the next thing to do would be to create an accountability structure for leaders. Because right now, no matter what temple you're in, I can say with certainty, you don't know how to remove your temple president if you need to. There is not a clear procedure for how to do that, nor do you know how to establish a temple president if you need to. If either one had to be done, it would be pandemonium. It would be confusion. It would be conjecture. It would be gossip. It would be this one, that one, typical nepotism, mafia experience. So to create a clear structure, how does one become established as a leader? How does one become removed as a leader if you break the conditions of accountability? That would be a big step in the direction of creating a space again where people feel safe to offer their heart. And having Shastric, underpinned qualifications. I'm not so hot on the courses myself, because I know the disciples course, it's like, just because you took that doesn't mean that you know what it means to be a disciple. So I'm more interested in metrics of actual Siddhantic demonstration. Like, can you speak about Guru Tattva in a real way? Can you speak about Jiva Tattva? Can you speak about Bhakti Tattva authoritatively? And if you took a Bhakti Shastri course to be able to do that, then good. But that's not the only way that you can get to that place of understanding. The study of the Shastra is essential. The formal study of it through a course offered by the institution, not necessarily.
Someone here says Namras censors the Purva Paksha. I take offense to that. I don't censor anybody. So the reason I didn't post your comments, Prabhu, is because your comments are that long, and you need to make them concise. If you want to see them on the screen, you got to make them concise. I'm not censoring anybody. I don't like censorship. But anyways, we can hash it out on the comment section later on, because we're out of time here. Deva Madhava Prabhu, can you please give us some parting words for our listeners? Please. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. Boy, well, I appreciate all the engagement that the devotees offered. I see there's quite a few comments. And chant and be honest. Happiness comes as a byproduct of honesty. Somebody wanted some sashtra. So sadhava, Prabhupada translates this word as thoroughly honest. One who is a sadhava can become a sadhaka. But before we get this sadhava down, before we become a thoroughly honest person, we won't be able to relish the process. We won't be able to receive the support of the sadhus in our community. And everything will continue to exist on the level of pretense, where I need you to look like a good devotee, so I feel like a good devotee myself, because I'm not really getting a taste. I'm just in the pageant of Krishna consciousness rather than the process. So when we get honest and straightforward with each other, which happens in small circles, whether you're a part of there's a 20,000 person church out in California. They don't let people come to the church for 2 years. There's a 7-step process before the person is invited to the church. And that's practically like initiation. And in that process of 2 years, that person is welcomed into the home of congregants. They get to share their heart, share their feelings, share their experiences of where they've been. They get discipled according to the Bible. They have Bible study together. And that entering into the church is like an initiation for them. And recognizing that no ISKCON temple is ever going to be able to interface in the profound way that you are with an individual is the first step to making, the preaching really happen again. Creating that space where someone can come honestly express their frustration with the material existence to you, and then you give them solutions that you're applying in your life. That's the movement. And the temples are a resource, a library, university, however you want to put it, for things that support that experience that you have to be the one to give them. That's what I would like to encourage everybody to see.
Wow. Deva Madhava Prabhu, I admire you very much, and my admiration for you has deepened even more from sitting here and conversing with you for almost 2 hours. And I think a lot of devotees are also, I see in the comments, showing their appreciation to your maturity, to your knowledge, and to your overall building of community and how to do that, people before projects. I think it's so wonderful, so beautiful. I look forward to coming to Ypsilanti again. I'm just like counting the days when I can come see you all again, because it was such a beautiful time. And
feeling is mutual, so don't delay.
Yes. The only thing is the weather there. I mean, that's the only thing that's stopping me.
Anyway, you're in Jersey right now.
Winters are not that bad. I hear it's really bad in Michigan.
That propaganda, Prabhu. It's just propaganda.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't mind it because it keeps people away. But you're not one of the ones we want to keep away. The winters are pleasant. It's when the snow is falling, the Shastra is calling. It's a good reason to stay inside and cuddle up. But really, we have 4 seasons here, and you see why Krishna made 4 seasons. There's a time to do certain things, a time to stop doing other things, and it creates a really beautiful cycle of a year. So don't be shy.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Thank you for all our listeners. We have tomorrow, Navina Nirada Prabhu, the legendary book distributor, is going to come on and talk about the power of appreciation. That's the title that he had. He wanted to speak about that. So I was like, hey, let's do it. And again, thank you, Deva Madhava Prabhu. If you want to get in touch with Deva Madhava Prabhu, you can get in touch with him over Facebook. That's his name there on the screen. Send him a message, show him your appreciation. Please like and subscribe this and tell your friends about this podcast. This is the #1 Hare Krishna podcast. That's the late morning program. Deva Madhava Prabhu, stay on. I'm going to turn off the live, but everyone have a great rest of your evening. Hare Krishna.
Aranga. Thanks, devotees. Thanks, Prabhu.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.